Today we have a guest that is going to speak for us, Ms. Debra Burchfield from Pine Bluff. She is with Hope of the Delta. Many of you have seen our baby bottles out here last year, or was it year before now? Time runs. COVID took a whole year of my memory and life. I don't even know when it happened, but there's baby bottles out here last year. We filled those up. She's going to talk about that a little bit, but she has come down to visit with us. I called her and asked her through conversations with her and my wife, would you speak on Mother's Day? Because she has a great idea of motherhood, I believe, and with all of the things that's going on with abortion on a rate that's astronomical, I think we need our mothers to be mothers again, amen? And so that they can grow up to be grandmothers and enjoy the beauty of grandchildren. And so when she comes, are you guys ready? So we're going to watch a short video, and then Miss Deborah's going to come right on up.
These are my kids. They're 10 years apart. My wife and I thought we would probably only ever have the one, and would halfway joke to each other stuff like, if God wants us to have another kid, he's going to have to work a miracle. Well, God has a sense of humor, and we were 41 when our daughter was born. In the process of the pregnancy, had we discovered our child had some untreatable problem, we wouldn't have considered abortion. Like you, we believe that every life is precious and ordained by God. And we believe he's sovereign and that his will is perfect. And the unborn, created by God's hand, deserve to have a shot at life. But I should be clear on another point. We're a 44-year-old white couple that grew up in the church. We don't fit the standard profile of many of the women seeking abortion. Here's how that breaks down. In the Arkansas counties Hope of the Delta serves, the abortion rates are over 10%. In Jefferson County, it's over 20%. That's more than 200 babies out of every 1,000 pregnancies taken before they ever get a chance to see the sun. In Crittenden County, it's almost 16%. In 2017, the statewide abortion rate among black women was 15 to 20%, while the rate among white women totaled 5 to 8%. In 2017 alone, across the country, there were 851,000 abortions. That's an abortion rate of 18.1%, nearly 1 million babies. However, among black women nationwide, that percentage jumps to 34%. 34% of all pregnancies among black women nationwide were terminated. 295,000 black children taken in 2017 alone. This is a genocide. 850,000 deaths a year in any other context would be the number one public policy subject of the day. We would be at war with whatever was doing this to our country. That's 8.5 million babies killed in a 10-year span. Look, it's not my desire to make a political or racial statement here. The numbers, however, are difficult to ignore. This is a genocide, and it is systemic, and it affects the black community far more proportionally than any other ethnic group. Brothers and sisters, we must act. We must. Regardless of your background, race, politics, opinions, or past, we must band together for the sake of our communities, and our churches, and our souls. Hope of the Delta is already in action. Hope has locations in Pine Bluff and West Memphis and is in the process of opening a location in Stuttgart. We also have a mobile unit that goes to those in need. Every day we work with the young women and men of our communities to provide alternatives to abortion. We provide medical services, parenting classes, counseling, and more. We do it with love and perseverance. We share Christ with the young people that cross our paths. We form lasting relationships. The men and women of Hope are soldiers in this very real war for lives, and they are tireless. But we need your help. We survive on your generosity. Here are some numbers. We project Hope in Pine Bluff will need a budget of $215,322 for 2021. The mobile unit goes where no building can, but it requires $82,638 to continue to do so. Our West Memphis Center, which fights the third highest abortion rate in Arkansas, needs an estimated $98,275 this coming year. Our Stuttgart Center is in the process of a difficult renovation, and we need your help to bring this donated building into service. The 2021 budget for this site is $104,130. Please consider giving monetarily to Hope. We invite you to join us in the struggle for lives, born and unborn. Anything you can give helps us continue to bring Christ to the Arkansas Delta, to bring hope. We have an obligation to protect the helpless, those without a voice, to fight for them. We have an obligation to fight for the young women and men that are hopeless in the face of a life-changing pregnancy. When they see no other way, we're obligated to show them the only way, in Jesus. When our daughter was born, they whisked her away from us before we could even lay eyes on her. They told us absolutely nothing. We were scared. For more than an hour, we waited. Finally, a doctor came in and told us, just matter-of-factly, "Well, your daughter has spina bifida." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. There was a solid chance my little girl would never walk on her own. Life, as we knew it, had just drastically changed. What did we do wrong that God would punish my child? It's difficult to express how we felt over the next several hours. Sorrow, certainly. Shock, probably. With my baby girl hooked up to tubes and a hole in her back, we prayed while we waited, and we wept. To make a very long story short, I believe God healed our daughter in the time between the hospital night and day shifts changing. I don't have any other explanation. They had been preparing to send our girl to surgery, which she no longer needed. I know that God doesn't do this in every instance, and I don't know why except to say that his reasons are his own, and I'm incredibly thankful for his mercy to my daughter and my family. This is the living part of life that young women and men miss when they abort a child. When we don't fight for these young men and women and unborn babies, this sort of miracle, the sort of miracle we experienced and the mercy that was shown to us, is cut away before it's given a chance to come to fruition. God cares about and loves all of his children, old and young, dark and light. The men and women that serve with Hope of the Delta are putting their words into action every day. This is the front line of the fight for life. It's not a political issue. It's a matter of life and death. Please contribute, please. For all the ones God commands us to love, for your own sake, please help. Help these young people have a chance to experience life, the ups and the downs, the unknowns, the joys and the sorrows. Give them the chance to experience God's great mercy and comfort in times of trouble, and his joy. I forgot to tell you my daughter's name. It's Laurel. It means victory. The doctors told us she may never walk, but God had other plans. Her favorite thing to do is run, and she does, like the wind.
Good morning, family. How are y'all? Happy Mother's Day. On behalf of all of the mothers who can't be here this morning and all of their children, I want to say thank you. They don't have the opportunity to come and say thank you. And I've wanted to come worship with you for quite a while now. And I want to let you know that I thank my God in all my remembrance of you. In every prayer of mine for y'all, making my prayer with joy, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. I want to thank you for that. When Paul wrote those words, he wrote them to the Philippian church. And as you know, the Philippian church was very instrumental in taking the gospel throughout the known world at the time. Now, I believe there's only one incident where Paul talked about someone from Philippi actually traveling with him. They were not in a position to travel with them. But he said that they were as much a part of what was going on because of their prayers, because of their giving, because of their involvement. So as you took a look at this video and you saw stories about West Memphis or Pine Bluff or Dumas or wherever, I want you to know that you are as much a part of the ministry taking place across the Delta, whether it takes place in Lake Village or whether it takes place in West Memphis. And that word partner actually means equal standing, which I think is really cool. What he was telling every single person in that church is that you are just as important in spreading the gospel as I am. And I thank God for that. I thank God that the Lord grabbed your heart, is what he's saying, and that you have been my equal partner from the moment that you heard about what God was doing. And that partnership has not faded. It is not jaded. It has not grown weary, but it has remained an equal partnership from that first moment all the way until now. Is that not amazing? How God uses each and every one of us. So I thank God that I'm here with you today. And I just want to share a little bit. I know that Pastor talked just briefly about COVID stealing a year of our lives, and I sometimes feel that way, but it just seems like that our world is on a downhill spiral, doesn't it? I mean, everything around us falling apart. We've got riots in the street. We've got murders taking place. We've got hatred. We have all kinds of vileness that people are speaking, slander. And sometimes it just seems insane. And then we have COVID that comes along on top of that and all of the political mess that's going on. So it seems like that we've been living in a day of adversity. Do y'all feel that? Has anybody felt that? And so as we kind of take a look at adversity, in 24:10, Proverbs 24:10, God says this. He says, if you faint in the day of adversity, and we have already said that we collectively are in a day of adversity. And believe me, if you are not personally in a day of adversity today, you will be. You have been or you will be. Because the enemy roams around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, and you are one of those that he seeks to devour. So if you are not in a day of adversity today, you will be. And not only that, collectively, as we take a look at the world around us, we can say we are in a day of adversity. So if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. You know, and here's the thing right here is I read this and I know me and I know myself and I know my strength is small. And I have to cry out, God, Lord, I need you in this day of adversity because I have no strength. But praise God that the Lord has become my strength. He has become my song. And he has become my salvation. And so when we rely on our own strength, it can be very confusing. God, what do we do? How to respond? How to react? It's too big a problem for me and I cannot become involved. And therefore, I just want to escape into myself or even into the church where I sit in the pew and I can raise my hand and I can sing. But I don't have to worry about what's going on out there, God, because I have no strength. And God says, that's okay because I do. And it is no longer an option for us to isolate ourselves and pretend that it does not exist, nor is it an option for us to faint. Because if we do, what we're saying is we have no strength and we're relying on our own. And God said, I am so grateful you recognize you have no strength. Let me be your strength. Let me be your strength. And I will raise you up. And so it goes on from there and says, remember in that day of adversity, now what do? It says to do it. It says rescue those who are being taken away from death. It doesn't say if you feel like it or if the thought passes your mind. It says rescue those who are being taken away to death. Hold back those who are stumbling to the slaughter. Now, that's not a suggestion. You didn't see the word if in there anywhere, right? But here is the word if. If you say, behold, I did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts perceive it? Does not he who keeps watch over your soul know it? And will he not repay man according to his work? And you just saw that very moving video. And you know that men and women are being deceived into taking the blessing of God and killing it. Now, I don't say this in harshness, and I don't say this in meanness. I say this saying that they have had their minds and their hearts captured by an enemy. And the enemy does not repay kindly. I will tell you that. When men and women engage in abortion, they become trapped. Sin says that we become ensnared by our sin. And once you become ensnared by your sin, what happens on the other side is not very pretty. So rescue those who are stumbling towards the slaughter. Men and women who have been deceived and engage in abortion, eventually the truth will come crashing in on them what they've done. And I've seen hundreds upon hundreds of women who are being destroyed internally when they come to the knowledge that they have lost a child, what they have done to their child. So what should we do in that moment and helping them and pointing them to the right direction? Hold back those who are stumbling towards the slaughter. And if you don't believe the notion that abortion is slaughter, then that's a whole nother story. And obviously, we don't want to talk about the atrocity of abortion right now. But I'm here to tell you that we would act if we had almost 1 million Americans that were being dragged out in the street and being torn apart limb by limb. We would then respond. So why do we not respond when we have the most innocent among us torn apart limb by limb? We have sanitized the action by calling it abortion, by calling it a medical procedure. They are being led to the slaughter. They are being slaughtered to the tune of 1 million, almost 1 million a year. And so as we take a look at this and say, okay, Lord, but how do we do that? You know, how do we rescue them? Because that's real easy to say, but what does that practically look like? And there are a lot of different ways that you can become involved in wanting to rescue these people, or wanting to make a statement, or wanting to make a difference. But the fact of the matter is, how do you do that? And there have been a lot of ways that people have become involved. In the way that God has led me to be involved, the way that God has led this congregation, this body to be involved, is through the act of love. By loving and by serving. And so we have engaged in that and in this ministry, because here's the thing. Women are not going to come in the door of your church and come sit down and ask you, say, I think I might be pregnant, and by the way, I'm thinking of having an abortion. And it's not like you can be checking out Walmart and stop and ask the clerk, do you think that you might be pregnant, or would you choose life if you were pregnant, or that kind of stuff does not happen. And so we have to make ourselves available to that, and that's what the Hope Center is about. Having a place of safety, of the Lord's place, having holy ground that a young woman can come in and she can feel safe to make some decisions. You know, when I first started at Hope, I started in March of 2005, and it was a very young center, and really, basically, it was started because some people had a burden about the abortion rate, and they had heard about a thing called a crisis pregnancy center, and so they founded it, and then when they hired me, it was kind of just there, and they were doing a self-testing model where they were just giving a woman a pregnancy test, and their way of sharing the gospel was asking, do you go to church? And so through a period of a few months, the Lord brought me into the ministry kind of kicking and screaming. I don't know if anybody else has kind of been like, I was not going to do that. And so the Lord brought me in, and I had some really good training. It went something like that. Here's your key. Good luck with that. Literally, they did not even take me to the center. They gave me the address. Here's the key. And so during that time, the Lord had just kind of laid his hand on it. And we didn't really have a vision statement. We didn't have a mission statement. We just had a pull by the Lord of some things that we wanted to do. And I can remember walking the hallways just crying and crying out to God, God, what is it you're doing here? What would you like to see happening? We were in a little shop walk on 6th Street, just with a bunch of furniture somebody had drug out of a shop that had been used 20 years before. And so I would just cry out to God, Lord, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Because we can have all kinds of good ideas, but the fact of the matter is, I don't know about you, but if God's not going, I don't want to go. I'm like Moses, Lord, don't send me up there. If you're not going with me, I don't want to go. So in the process of all of that, the Lord brought us to the point of saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to empower men and women. Because if we go back to this rescue statement and we place our heads and our minds around that, we're going to empower them to choose life. We're going to empower them to choose spiritual life for themselves. Because if a man or a woman comes in and they're abortion-minded, but they don't know the Lord, and while they're in there, if we say anything, and believe me when I say there's just nothing in my power that I can say to help anybody to change your mind, but let's just say that by some chance happens and she changes her mind about abortion, but she walks out that door, never have heard about hearing about Jesus Christ on a fast track to hell. What have I done? Because you see, this life is this long. This human life that we're walking in right now is about this long, and eternity spans on forever. So we want to empower them to choose spiritual life for themselves. So how do we do that? When young men and women come in and we see every socioeconomic status that you can think of, we see all kinds of religions, and we don't line them up like at a foreign mission health fair where we say you have to hear the gospel before you can have our services, but we are very it's imperative to us, and so we pray before we enter into there, and we train our advocates to conversationally share the gospel, praying as the girl leads the conversation, as she drives the conversation, and we listen that the Lord will help us to ask good questions to where she herself will begin to ask about the Lord, and we can share the gospel. And because of that, because we are so intent on doing that, we share the gospel with 80% of the women who come in for our services. And so we want to empower them to choose spiritual life for themselves. Then in that whole issue of life, we want to empower them to choose physical life for their babies. And so we train our advocates on how to educate these young women, how to begin to ask some good questions, to listen, to see what is her reasoning for wanting to have an abortion, and to empower her that she can do all things through Jesus Christ. You know, I was, it's kind of hard because when you're in ministry, sometimes the enemy wants to attack you. And Pastor, you can speak to this. Sometimes you'll have days or weeks where you're like, God, am I doing any good? Is this where I still need to be? Are you using me? Have I done anything to make a difference anywhere? And I was kind of going through one of those phases of mine one day, and I went out and I'd gone to a store to pick out a whiteboard for my office. And it's funny, when it comes to scriptural decisions, I can pretty quickly make a scriptural decision, but for some reason I can't pick out the right size whiteboard for my office. Does anybody feel me? I'm like, wait, maybe this isn't right. Let me go back. I don't know. So what should be a 5-minute shopping trip suddenly turns into half an hour. And so it's just like the biggest decision of my life, what size whiteboard to get. And so finally I got back in line for the last time. And while I was doing my little scurrying around, I had noticed the manager of the store, and she just shone. She was just gorgeous from the inside out. You could just see the Spirit shining through her. And she saw me get back in line, and she opened up another register, and she said, come over here and let me check you out. And so she was checking me out, and I said, you know, you're just so beautiful today. And I thought about how that sounded like today. So I said, well, I'm sure you're beautiful every day. And she laughed, and she looked at me. She said, you don't recognize me, do you? And I said, well, maybe I know you from one of the churches. You do look familiar to me. And she stopped and she looked at me in the eye and she said, she'll be 10 years old this year. And then I knew where I knew her from. And so we began to visit, and I asked her if she had pictures. Of course she did. And we were talking about how wonderful her life was going. She was making good money. She was in church. She had reconciled with the Lord. She had her young family. They were doing well. They were doing well in school. They were all focused on God. And it was just amazing listening to her story. And she told me, she said, I walked up into that center broken, and I said, I can't do this. She said, and you told me, yes, you can. She said, and when that message that I could still succeed and that God would get me through, it changed everything in my life. It changed everything. And then she said, are you still with them? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, well, don't stop. She said, don't stop. Now, here it is, God preaching to me through this young woman. She said, you're touching lives every day and you don't even know it. Just walking around, doing your thing, and you're touching lives. She said, don't stop. She said, I know it's hard. She said, I know it's got to be hard. She said, if it gets too hard, go out into your car and scream for a while. But then go back in and just keep doing what you're doing because you're saving lives. So we hugged, and I asked her to come by, and I took my whiteboard out to my car and sat out there and cried for about 15 minutes. See, we want to empower them to choose physical life for their babies. And so women come into the medical side of our ministry, and they want to find out, am I pregnant? And so that's a question that we want to answer for them, the most important question of their life. And the scariest. For all the mothers and dads out here, I always say that the scariest word in the English language is evangelism. I don't know why. But the scariest sentence is, honey, I think I might be pregnant. And that's even if you want to have a baby, it's scary, right? I mean, that's a scary, scary moment. And so they come in and we have medical grade pregnancy tests. We have nurses on staff. We want to run that pregnancy test. In the middle of all that, she's in an advocacy session where she has someone really listening to her, talking with her, hopefully sharing Christ with her, pointing her back to the Lord, answering some of her questions, educating her, empowering her, and helping her to make hopefully a great decision, a good decision. And in the middle of all that, if she's positive, we want to schedule her for an ultrasound. Sometimes we do the ultrasound the same day because we want to give her a window into the womb to let her see that it's a real baby. And not only are lives being saved through that we know of, but there are lives being saved that we may never know of. You see, I was pregnant with my second daughter the first time I had an ultrasound, and it was actually in the same building that we're in Pine Bluff because it used to be an imaging center back there. And I walked in the door very pro-choice, very feminine, not walking with the Lord. And even though I was not looking to have an abortion with this pregnancy, I was still very pro-choice. I was 12 weeks gestation. And they brought me back to do the ultrasound. I didn't think I'd see anything. I mean, what are you going to see at 12 weeks, right? I didn't think there was anything there. And I don't know what younger people, you're like, well, that's stupid. And you can go outside and you can see on our table little babies, 12-week-old gestation. But I don't know if we thought they turned into babies at 8 months and then popped out. I don't know what we thought back during those days, but and I didn't realize at the time, but I had a pro-life tech, but I know that now looking back, and she kept wanting me to look at the screen. And you have to remember, this is 26 years ago, and so there's a little bitty screen there, all grainy, and all I saw was just a black blob, which is what I thought, but I was going to watch to kind of, to kind of make her happy, and so. But then she had to take a particularly hard measurement, and she had to push down on that probe. And when she did, my daughter, Sunny, responded to pressure the same way she does now. She exploded. So She had been in a little ball, and when that pressure hit her, she threw that head back, her legs out, and she threw that arm up, and I could see her fingers uncurling on that monitor. And the first thought that struck me was, that's a baby. And the second thought that struck me was, that's my baby. Well, flash forward 8 years later, my oldest daughter, that I had quite a bit younger, had just turned 16, and she called me from a friend's house, and she said, Mom, I took a pregnancy test. It's positive, and they're taking me to have an abortion. And you see, if God had not let me see my 12-week-year-old daughter explode on that ultrasound screen, I would have said, okay, well, do you need me to go with you? Praise God, somebody's paying for it. But I told her, I said, I need you to come home. Now, remember, I wasn't walking with the Lord then, so I probably didn't use those exact words. But I more or less said, come home. So she came home, and I was able to share with her that that was a baby. And that was her baby, and that was my grandbaby. And I would support her decision if she wanted to have the baby and place it for adoption. I would support the decision if she wanted to have the baby and have me raise it. And I would support the decision if she wanted to have the baby and raise it herself, but I would not support an abortion. And I told her, I said, I love you. You're my daughter. I always love you, no matter what you do. And I can't force you to do anything, or you wouldn't be pregnant right now if I could control what you were doing. But I will not support this. And because of that ultrasound that I had had 8 years before, I was able to share that with her. She chose life, and now I have a 19-year-old grandson that's going to save the world. It's going to change the world. And so we never know. You know, last year we had 41 babies saved from abortion through the Ministry of Hope of the Delta. But we actually don't know in the long run how many women we've created little mini missionaries that can go out and share with their friends, you know, when their friend becomes pregnant, about what they saw on that ultrasound machine. And so, you know, in the middle of that, we want to empower that physical life. And we take a look. I've been so many places, and people say if it's just one life, it'll be worth it. But here's the thing, it's never just one life. Because there's such a thing as multiplication. I shared with Pastor. He asked me how many grandkids I had, and I said 10. I said we took the commandment, be fruitful and multiply, very seriously. And so, but the fact of the matter is that we beget. We're supposed to spiritually. We're supposed to physically. We beget. And so I was actually thinking and praying one morning as I was in the shower. Am I the only one, by the way, that prays in the shower? Anybody else? Pray in the shower. I was praying in the shower. And I was thinking, the Lord brought to my mind that my oldest daughter, the one who wanted to have the abortion with my grandson, her father, I was quite a bit younger when I got pregnant with her, he wanted me to have an abortion. And because of a bad pregnancy experience I had a few months before that, I refused to have one, he might have been able to talk me into it. And I was just praising God when you brought that to my mind. Thank you, the Lord, that even in the middle of my ungodliness, you protected her. You know, and now I have this huge part of my heart, my daughter, my baby girl, and how much it meant to me. And the Lord brought to my mind that not only would I not have her, but I wouldn't have my 4 grandkids. You see? And I really started thinking about that because since 1973, there have been 60 million abortions. But if we really look at it, there have been 3 generations since 1973. And so if we're saying that, well, statistically speaking, they say that every individual has 2.5 children. Now, don't ask me how they get that 0.5. I know that my 3 sometimes seem like 7.5, but I don't know. But at any rate, if we take that number statistically by 3 generations, 60 million, 3 generations, 2.5 children each, that's over 350 million lives. 350 million lives cut off. The population of the United States is only 330. We have cut off a nation. We have cut off a nation. And so when we talk about just one life, it is never just one life. The same way each and every one of you is not just one life. Like the girl told me in the store, just walking around, you're affecting lives every day. So we want to empower men and women to choose spiritual life for themselves, and we want to empower them to choose physical life for their babies. But we don't stop there. Because when the Lord talks about life, He talks about life. Not just being justified, not just about our physical life, but how to walk that out, how to become sanctified. Because Christ said, I've come to give you life, abundant life. And so when we have a young woman that comes through the medical portion and she chooses life and she chooses to parent, we want to transition her over into our medical, our educational side, where we have parenting classes, prenatal classes, life skill classes, and we have group classes so that we can get that synergy like we have in here in Bible study. And we have our teachers that pour into them, and then they can take their money and spend on things that they need for their baby in our baby store with brand new items. We're not a handout organization, and I don't take anything away from handout organizations, but we're a hand-up organization. How many of y'all in here in the past have needed a hand up? You don't need a hand out. You need a hand up. Because we want to walk through this with her. Now, the reason we even started the program was because years ago, I had a young woman that came in the center, and her life was a wreck. She had nothing to do with her family. She was really just living by scamming off this person, off another person. She didn't have a job. She had one child that was fixing to go into kindergarten. She had actually become pregnant because she hooked up with an inmate in the bathroom of a funeral home while he was home on emergency furlough. And she was headed to the abortion clinic. She just wanted to make sure that she was pregnant. But while she was in there, God broke her heart, and she decided to go ahead and give life. Well, 2 weeks later, she called me, and she said, Miss Deborah, I'm not going to have an abortion. I believe everything that you shared with me, but what am I supposed to do? Because I can't buy diapers, I can't buy wipes, I can't get a crib, I can't get a car seat, I can't do anything. And I said, well, I've been really praying about this program, an Earn While You Learn program, where you come in for classes and get things that you need for your baby. I said, but, we haven't initiated it yet. That young woman called me every day and said, have you started the program yet? And so I think that was the Lord's way of going ahead and getting me through that door. Because I am not a prognosticator. I cannot tell the future, but I am a procrastinator. I can make the future come a lot later. So she called every day, and we started the program, and she came through the program, and the Lord just began to work miracles in her life. And she would sit there and cry and say, why would people who don't know me love me so much? And I said, that's God speaking to you. Now, how are you going to answer him? Well, this young woman reconciled with the Lord, reconciled with her family. She got a part-time job, got into school over at UAPB. She said, I want to be just like the women at Hope, and I want to help other young women not to make the same mistake I did. She graduated from UAPB with a degree in counseling. She got a job at Fayetteville, moved her little family up to Fayetteville so that she could get into U of A master's program while she's working, graduated the master's program, has all those letters behind her name, moved back to Pine Bluff, had a wonderful paying job, was working in women's ministry through her church, and she has since met a godly young man, and they got married and moved out of state. But I keep up with her, and her 16-year-old daughter is now a cheerleader on the debate team, straight A student, and entrepreneur, because she's opened her own business making little hair ties and things like that. So that's a life truly changed that you have to step back and you have to say, God, we give you glory for that. That is an abundant life. Amen? And so those are some of the stories and some of the miracles of things that God does through the Hope Center. We have the center in Pine Bluff. We have the center in West Memphis. We have the mobile unit. And we have a center that is under renovation in Stuttgart. And so there are so many ways the Lord is using. I've been praying for over 16 years, and I've got this dirty old map in my office that the Lord had me put these red pins in years ago to kind of pray of where we need to go and where the greatest need is. Because the need is great. And it's out there. And the Lord placed in my heart a long time ago, Deborah, don't send out an engraved invitation. Go. My word does not say invite them. It says go. And so, looking at that and seeing how we do that and God maneuvering us and changing us and being able to reach out to people that might not look like we do, that might not sound like we do, that might not live like we do. Their culture might be different. They might dress differently. But how important it is that to reach out to them. We used to have a girl that would come in the center, and it was so funny because almost all of my advocates are, we're not spring chickens, let me put it that way. So we come from a different a different mindset and generation. And so I would have this young girl that came in, and she would wear very low-cut shirts, and she had these 2 baby feet tattooed right here on her breast. And my advocates would go in there, and it was so shocking to them that she had those baby feet on her breast. And so a lot of the things that will go on of what we're not used to, but I want to share with you in Scripture what Christ tells us to do. He says, go therefore, and this is in Matthew, and we all know this, Matthew 28, and then in 19 it says, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded. And just kind of going through that, the first thing that we think of is, I need to go to a different nation, like a different country, and I need to be involved in foreign mission work. And here's the fact of the matter, that word nation means a race, a tribe, especially a foreign one, a Gentile, a heathen. Go to all the heathen. Y'all ain't got to leave Arkansas to meet some heathen. And if y'all don't know that, I'll just give you a shining example right here, because I was one of the biggest ones ever. And I am so grateful that God sent somebody to me to teach me, to share with me an inconvenient truth that was not afraid of upsetting me, not walking on eggshells around me, but in love sharing with me. You see, I'm not a whole lot different from those. As a matter of fact, I'm not any different from those women that come into the center. There's a reason that the Lord has placed me there, and why I can so very easily relate and know what their thinking is and know what direction they're going and exactly what they need to hear, because I was that woman. See, I used to say that from the moment I can remember, I was tormented in my thinking. And the Lord really had to take me to a place to step back and really take a look at my life objectively. And people often want to hear my testimony. I'm going to tell you, my testimony is horrible. But the work of God's hand over my life is amazing. It's beautiful. The first time that I was sexually molested, I was 7 years old. I never told anyone. My parents didn't know. Nobody knew. It was somebody outside of the family. And that really set up a domino effect for how it affected me the rest of my life. My father was in the military, so we moved every 2 years. And youth, I really want you to listen to this. Children, I want you to listen to this, because I was never invited to church ever. Never did anybody come invite me to church, but I was invited to every party that took place. And even though I was raised in a Christian home, as a matter of fact, I don't ever remember the learning, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. I think I must have learned that in the crib. So even though I was raised in a good home, in a godly home, my path didn't take long before it started going off the rails. And I began thinking that there's something wrong with me, that people can't love me, that there must be something wrong in my DNA. And I began searching for that. And I began looking for a man that would love me no matter what I looked like, what kind of hair day I had, who I knew, what I could do for them, how much money I had, somebody that would pursue me to the end of the world, and somebody who would even die for me. It's what I call a Cinderella Syndrome, and every woman is born with that. And so I would pursue that, and I would find a man that I thought fit that bill, and I would put my trust and my faith in him, and it wouldn't be very long before he would let me down, because he's a man, he's not a God, and he has to let me down. And a man who has a different drive, even though I would never say that, he would sense that would demoralize him, it would bankrupt the relationship, and therefore sabotage it, and therefore it would start the process all over again. Until I got into more abusive relationships down the road. I got involved with the wrong crowd. I began using drugs, alcohol, all kinds of crazy things. I was in an abusive marriage to a drug dealer for a while, and I was finally able to break free from that. And in the middle of all that, I was on a bend to just show that somebody could love me. Anybody could love me. And looking back on that, I can see that the Lord, even during that time, laid his hand of protection on me when he brought me my current husband. Because it could have turned out really, really bad. But he was everything that my other husband was not. And when I was in his arms, I felt safe. And so in the midst of all of that, probably what I thought was the best time of my life, and even though I still was not walking with the Lord, I was a creaster. Y'all know what a creaster is? We go to church on Christmas and Easter. So I was a member of a church, and I'd take my kids to the programs, and I'd show up occasionally. And then we got pregnant with our last son, and just amazing. And you know when you have your last one, you know it's your last one, how just so you just like pin everything on it. It's like, as a matter of fact, I got a see-through shower curtain so I could see the baby while I was taking a shower, that kind of stuff, you know. And then one night I was feeding him, everybody got to bed, and I was talking to him, and I know it's crazy kind of talking to a baby like you would an adult, but I was telling him how much I loved him, and I said the last thing I said that night was, you know, Mama loves you, and I'll always love you with all my heart, and I might not always been here because I've always worked really hard and played really hard and burnt the candle at both ends, but I want you to know I always love you. And I went and laid him in the bassinet and went back and actually fell asleep on the couch. And that next morning at 5 o'clock, I heard the alarm going off. And I woke up, and my first thought was, well, Jimmy didn't wake up for me to feed him at 2 o'clock, you know. And so I ran down the hallway, and it's amazing how many thoughts that you can have in just a 2-second span. Like, well, you know, maybe Tim got up and fed him or something else, and I threw open that door, and I found my child dead in his bassinet. He had died from SIDS. And at that moment, my brain stopped working. And that lie that was in me, that, Deborah, there's something so wrong with you that even God cannot love you. That lie became a raging reality in my mind. And for me, everything stopped. I ran down to my daddy's house, and I banged on the door saying, "Daddy, come fix my baby." So he came up there and tried to give CPR, which of course it didn't work. And as the coroner left my driveway with my son in the back, I fell on my knees on the deck and I shook my fist towards heaven. And I said, I hate you, and I banish you from my heart. When my pastor walked in the door, I immediately screamed at him and said, "Get out of my house and take your God with you." He ducked his head and he turned. The insanity going on in my brain. I could not walk through the door in my mentality that my child was dead. I remember someone coming in and putting pills in my hands. And I took the pills, and for 2 weeks, my husband dressed me and fed me and carried me around. And they took me to a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and I was on 4 different kinds of medication. I was diagnosed with all kinds of different disorders, PTSD, stress-induced psychosis, acute depression, even though it was not that cute, believe me, not from my viewpoint. And so they gave me medication, and the medication would make me seem better to people on the outside, but inside I was getting worse. And I remember the doctor sitting me down one day, and he's saying, "You're never going to get better if you don't take your medication." And see, having done drugs in the past, I knew exactly where to run to, and my husband and I became those kind of people that you normally run off from your home. We began doing drugs, making drugs. And what would have been my son's 1-year birthday, we were actually arrested on drug charges, first-time drug charges. When we went to court, I knew immediately things weren't going well. And so I tried to commit suicide in the middle of the trial by taking all of those medications. I took 121 high-dosage medications, trazodone, alzaporum, 2 other different kinds of medications where I couldn't even stand for my verdict. My husband kept standing me up. I actually took the pills in the sheriff's office bathroom. So my husband was standing me up, didn't even know what my verdict was, got me back over to the jail. And when they were emptying my purse, and I don't even know how my purse made it to the jail, my mother was there, and she took all of our belongings, but God made sure that my purse got to the jail. And they were putting those empty pill bottles on the counter. My husband said, "You have got to call an ambulance. She has taken all those pills." He could see that. And they didn't want to call an ambulance. And finally, when the administrator left, my husband looked at the guard and said, "Man, if you've never done anything right in your life, call an ambulance." So the ambulance came, and I remember waking up briefly while my husband laid me on the stretcher with his tears were hitting my face. And I opened my eyes, and he said, "Please don't leave me. I love you. I promise I'll get you out of this. Please don't die. Please don't die. I can't live without you." I remember a little bit of the ambulance ride, and they got me to the hospital. They called my mother back, and they said, "There's nothing we can do for her. She's taken too many pills, and it's been in her system too long. It's too late to pump her stomach. We're giving her some drugs to try to have a counter effect, but there's not a whole lot we can do." And you see, they had given up on me. But God stepped in, and he said, "I'm not done with her yet. I am not done with her yet." And even though many of people would have written me off as just a drug addict, God did not. Because where man sees trash, God sees treasure. I woke up 2 weeks later, and they were pulling tubes out of my body and said, "You're going to live." They sent me back to jail, When I got back to jail, I made a collect phone call home. My 7-year-old answered the phone, and he said, "Mommy, is it true you're going to have to spend the next 18 years in prison?" And that's when I found out what my prison sentence was. So I sat down, and it's as if God said, "Where are you going to run from me now? Deborah, where are you going to run from me now?" I got into prison, and I was lucky enough to get into a program called Principles and Applications for Life. It's a 12-week faith-based program. I spent 2.5 years in there. I like to say I'm spiritually ADHD. I had to go over it and over it and over it and over it. But the Lord actually kept me on in there. I became chaplain's clerk, became the inmate leader over the program. They were actually grooming me for that because they thought I had 18 years to do, which is pretty much close to a life sentence. You know, when you're in your late 30s, you've got another 20 years to do. And my husband, who at the time did not even have a high school diploma, got into the legal library, and he was able to write a Rule 37 for us and got us back into court. We got back into court, and they met me in my jail cell, the prosecutor did, and said, "We're going to go ahead and grant yours, but I want your husband to go before the judge." And so he went before the judge, and the judge did not rule that day. He said he wanted to study the case and send us back. And so then when my husband got his ruling, his paperwork, which was filed earlier than mine, was filed 8 days too early. So the judge did not have jurisdiction, but they waited until he was out of time before they gave him the ruling, so he was out of time. And but God did a miracle and kicked the door open for me after 2.5 years and brought me home. And so I came home, and but I was a changed person because while I was in prison, you see, in the middle of all my anger, God showed me that it was never him turning away from me. It was me turning away from him. And there were two things that happened to me simultaneously. I saw what my sin was really like in the light of a holy God. But the corresponding truth was how much God loved me. And when those two truths came together, it was like being dipped in ice water, and every fiber of my being came to life. And I will never be the same. One of the greatest verses I've ever read is, "God chooses the base things of this world, and he uses the foolish to confound the wise." And I almost jumped out of my skin sitting there in prison when I read that, saying, "Praise God, I qualify. I qualify." See these women and men that come in the door, because we do have a men's ministry now where we want to pour into the men and teach them how to be fathers, encourage them to be there with those women, hopefully marry them, take care of that baby. These men and women, sometimes other people look at them and they think they're the base things of this world. God says, no. They're mine. They're mine. So why should you be involved in a ministry that does this kind of stuff? Because God has a passion in your heart that he wants to play out. You know, we have Baby Bottle coming up. It's our biggest fundraiser, or second biggest fundraiser of the year. You saw the money or the funds on the screen, what it takes to run the center. It takes a lot of money to run the center. We've left bottles out here. I would ask you pick one up, pray. Pray to see how God wants you to be involved, what he wants you to put in that bottle. We need volunteers. We are mainly volunteer-driven. We do have staff. We'll train you if you want to come sit on the mobile unit. The mobile unit comes to Dumas every other Friday. It goes to Mickey every other Wednesday. I was telling Pastor we would be there every week, but we don't have the funds to do it. and we don't have the volunteers to do it. We have a nurse on the mobile unit that has to be on there all the time, but she can't be on there by herself. So we have to have volunteers. Renee Powell, who I've not seen here today, she's probably with her daughters. Oh, she's in the nursery. She is actually one of our advocates. You can come to Pine Bluff once a month if you want. That would be great, or even once a week, be one of our teachers. We also need mission teams. I need some help with that renovation. My husband just had surgery this week. He was in an accident. He was really the one heading up the renovation. We've got some framing left to do, so I need some people that know about framing. They can come frame out 3 little walls for me so that we can do the rest. People that know about electricity or can hang sheetrock or do yard work or, just about anything like that. Come, please. We need you. We desperately need you. My husband now can't do it with his arm like that. So in order to move forward, and try to hit that county that has the 10th highest abortion rate in the state of Arkansas. We need some help in doing that. We also are trying to fund the renovation. The building was donated out of the blue. And so people say, what's your budget? And I do this and this. So $0 and a big prayer. But there's a 7,000 feet building, and for $15 you can fund a foot. That will take care of renovation costs and also implementing the ultrasound and doing a lot of things like that. Prayer. How many of y'all pray? Well, some of y'all didn't even raise your hand. Let me repeat that question. How many of y'all pray? Thank you. You can be part of our prayer team. And in the middle of that, you might get a text message saying, hey, we have an abortion-minded girl in the mobile unit or Pine Bluff or West Memphis or wherever. Please stop. Stop and give a flare prayer real quick, because prayer means everything. So many ways that you can be involved and you can make a difference. I'm going to be right out here. I'm going to be working at the table. And also, I just want to kind of say the 40% of all women by the time they're 45 will have had an abortion. So more than likely, there's somebody, at least one person here who's had an abortion. And I want to tell you, God hasn't given up on you. God has not given up on you. There are people in here who have sexual abuse in your past. Don't let it hold you down anymore. Scripture says, seeing that we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay down every weight and the sin that does so easily beset us, and let us run with endurance a race that is set before us. That's plural. We got to help each other, y'all. But the greatest weight a woman can bear is the weight of a past abortion or sexual abuse. We can help you with that. We have biblical studies that help you with that. And once you get help with that, then the Lord can use you in this area. We can train you to help other women. So I'm going to be right here. I know I've talked a long time. Y'all hungry, ready to go? Want me to sit down, shut up? Tell the pastor, never let her back up there again. But I'm going to be out here at this table. Please stop and say hello to me. I got some freebies. I'd love to hear your story. If you want to be involved, I've got a sign-up sheet. I've got more information about hope. If you want to complain, kick my shin on the way out, whatever. Just please stop and see me, okay? Thank you all so much for letting me come share with you today.
Hold on that mic. I got a couple of questions.
Okay, sure.
Am I on, guys? Yeah. Whoa, that sounds really good. A couple of questions I want to ask you. Come right
Sure.
over here by me. You make me look better. So how much funding? You said $15 a square foot.
Mm-hmm.
And so how much funding is needed, the lack of, to finish the Stuttgart building?
Well, we have gotten in about 20,000. I think it's 104, so we still got 80,000 left to go.
And this
But-
project started when? When did you receive this building?
We actually received the building right before COVID hit.
We'll just
So,
forget
yeah,
COVID. That's
yeah.
a year of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So we've been working on the renovation since about January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we have framers, electricians, and yard work people in this building, so get ready, guys and gals, for a mission trip to Stuttgart. Amen.
Amen.
And
Hey,
so, that was
we're
one of
there every Saturday, but if somebody were to come up to me and say, can you do the third Tuesday of the week at 12 o'clock, midnight, I'd be there with keys, let you in. Absolutely.
Well, that was one of the first things that I asked her. I said, "Can we help do something?" And because we're a hands-on kind of church, and so that is one of the physically far as serving. That's one of the greatest needs, along with volunteers.
Yes, sir.
And you're going to give maybe someone in here would love to volunteer in some area. I mean, if you hadn't been moved by this story, you're dead. I mean, if you can't see that God's hands working in Deborah's life, has been working and still working, then something's wrong with whatever it is wrong with you. It's really bad. And so we'll open up the altars directly, okay? And so we want you to stop by and let her
Yes, please.
explain what maybe, it's all foreign to me, and you may say, I don't even know how to do this. Well, she said she'd give you a training, she'll explain it, and maybe you feel like that you are inadequate, that you don't know how to do this, that you've never done this. Well, I've done a lot of things that I've never done before.
Absolutely, and that's who we need. If you're feeling in here thinking, I feel God pulling me, but I feel inadequate, you're the person that we want. Because that's the one God can work through. The one that says, let me walk up in here and fix everything. We don't need those kind of people. We need the people God works through.
Yeah, they usually call those pastors, and they don't need. No, I'm kidding. So, hey, I want you to stop by and visit Miss Deborah there. Thank you so much.
You.
How many of you been blessed by this today?
Thank you. Thank you. It's a blessing. Y'all been my blessing today.
Well, what a wonderful Mother's Day. My wife, you got to thank God for pastors' wives, because my wife, she told me, she said, honey, you gotta have this lady come. Said I've talked to her and visited with her, and she said you gotta have her come. And I went a little while there, and I'm thinking, okay, you know how pastors are. We got it all together, and we don't know everything sometimes, and we think we do. And so the Lord, my wife said, have you called Deborah? This has been a few weeks ago. And I said, I've been thinking about that. And she said, I need you to call her. And you know what that meant to me? God was saying, look, you're so stubborn, you won't get on board. I'm using your wife, and there's going to be problems. And so thank you for coming and being with us today.
Thank you.
And we bless you. Thank you so much for your work. Stop by the table. Get look, our bottles. We did this last year before when it was. How many... What's the average of these? Was it?
Well, it depends. Some people put change, some people put cash, some people put checks. So it can be anywhere from $17 up to, we've gotten checks for $1,000 in there. I really say, pray and see what God wants you to put in there. We don't want you to put more. We don't want you to put less. Because what you put in that bottle is your holy offering to God. That's not money to fund anything. That's money to Him. So we want you to respond the way you feel God is calling you to respond to that.
Amen. So, get your kids involved. Amen. Get your kids involved in doing this. And they say, well, what's this for, Mom? You having another baby? No. But and tell them why we're doing it. Because if you tell them while we're doing it, guess what? They don't have to hear it from a secular viewpoint of that abortion's okay. You start first, right? And so I wrote down a question that you had made a statement. It says, what does helping stop the slaughter of innocent babies look like? I wrote that question down as you were speaking. And this is what I answered that question with. It simply looks like this, that we teach our children biblical values at the church house and at your house. Because if we teach them biblical values, guess what? They don't have to be sucked into the lie of abortion and those type things, but it starts here in the church house, and it starts at your house. So that's what it's going to look like. If we're going to stop this thing called abortion, it starts with our kids. Guess what? When I'm dead and gone, and everybody in here, we're dead and gone, if the Lord tarries, if we teach our children correctly, our legacy, our ministries, it continues to live. I've told you many times here, and I told the first council that I had when I was here, if you're not about the kids, you got the wrong guy. Because you're a lot of times we're already set in our ways. Not that I'm not wanting you to change, but it's our children we can make a difference in. And in years down the road, they can make a difference. And we will impact this area and this community if we do it correctly. Let me bless you before we go.